what I intend to talk today to you. It's hard talking about yourself. However, I plan to talk only about the last about 8 years of my life. You know, Moses, the Bible omits about 30 years of his life. So first of all, before I get started, I want to be able to say this. I want to thank, I can get my paperwork together. Yeah. First of all, I want to give thanks to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for allowing me to share a few moments with you about my life, about the things that He had given me, and for giving me the opportunity to talk to my friends, my family, my Johnson Chapel family, and the officers and family members of the church. I am truly honored and blessed to be a part of you, a part of Johnson Chapel, because of the things that happened to me in these last 72 years of my life. But I'm going to talk to you only about 8 years, from 1969 to 1977, which was about eight years. During that particular time, I was 30 years old, and my wife at that time was 29. I had a 4-year-old son, Barry. And the reason why that's so important is because those were the years that I really got involved in the community college. Anybody know me know I am not a patient individual. I don't have the patience of Job. I can't wait around that long. And so I went over to enroll into the community college, and that's when everything started. Everything happened to me during that particular time. So I got in this long line, and my wife was standing there behind me. And I told her, I'm not going to stay here no more. Let's go. And she just kept standing there. She knew I wasn't going to leave her. So she just kept on standing there because she knew she had gone through this before, through the registration period. So I just went on back and got in line with her anyway. So I went ahead on and enrolled, and I worked third shift at Kaiser off, and I was taking the full load at the community college, stayed on the English the whole time I was there. This particular incident is what I want to talk about. Happened with the late Rudy Smith. Rudy Smith was a math teacher there at college, and I love math, I always have. And I was in his class that day. We had an examination. I was excited about the class, and I wanted him to correct my papers. He was telling me, Brown, you got to go to class. And I was saying, I understand, Mr. Smith, I'm going. I said, but I need you to correct my paper first. I want to know what my score was. And he said, well, if I do that, how are you going to get in that particular class? I said, well, you're going to write me an excuse. And we laughed. And so he did. And I passed math. I made high school up in the upper 90s. When I went down to the class area, my plans wasn't God's plan. My plan was I wanted to go finish up there at community college, go to A&T, finish A&T, go to Detroit and work at General Motors. They were gobbling up these engineers pretty well up there. That's where my plans were, but that wasn't God's plan. God's plan was for me to stay here in Alamance County, but I didn't know it at the particular time. So what happened was I went to the lab that day, and Jerry Buchanan was the individual who was teaching that particular lab. And that it was some type of problem that happened between the blacks and the white boys or whatever. And when I walked into the classroom, they was outside smoking, and there was a few guys underneath in the lab. And I was standing at the door. You know, you can be in the world, but you don't have to be of the world. And a couple of those guys turned around, I knew them all, said, come on, Brown, you don't need to be in here. Come on out here with us. And I looked at them and I looked at him and I said, you know, I come here to learn. I can't learn nothing standing out there with you guys. So I laid my books down, went over in the lab and finished that lab. They never said anything to me about it. And I never brought it up again. Well, what happened was, and from that standpoint, Jack O'Kelly, the late Jack O'Kelly, had just become on the Board of Commissioners. He was appointed Board of Commissioners at that particular time. John Brightmouth had told them at a board meeting that night that they couldn't find a black person in Alamance County that could take the EMT test. And why is all this so important? This is leading up to the fire marshal position I'm telling you about. Why this is so important. He said that Jack O'Kelly bit down that cigar, crunched down on it, and he was really upset. Well, I had already graduated from the community college, and I was already started A&T, and I was going well there, and everything was fine. My wife was at Elon, and she was saying that she would one time she wanted to wait till after I finished, and she was going to go back. I said, "No, you better go where the money is flowing. Since Sam's going to pay for the education too for the price of one." And we laughed about that. And what happened at that particular point, I was at St. Matthew's. And Barrett, 4 years old, was standing up in the pew. And when Jack O'Kelly come in, he hollered, "Where's Jack O'Kelly?" And everybody started to sniggle. So Jack told us after church, y'all going to tell that boy to keep his mouth closed and not come in church late. And so we laughed. So he said, JB said, "Can you come by my house this afternoon? I need to talk to you about something." So I said, "Fine." So we went by there that afternoon, and he said, "I would like for you to take this position down at the fire marshal's office, and as a coordinator as well, also as you get a job in the fire marshal's office." So I can't promise you anything, but it was 12 months, just 12 checks is all it was. And so he said, "I would like to consider that." And I said, "Well, you're gonna have to give me a little bit more than that. I got a 4-year-old kid. I've got a new house that I'm paying for. I got a new car out there, and you want me to give all this up just for on a wing and a prayer?" And he said, "Yeah, all the jobs that had the highest returns had the greatest risk." So I said, "Let me think about it, and I'll call you back." So Hilda and I got in the car, and we went to the house. We was talking about it, and she said, "I said, I'm giving up a lot just for this." And she said, "Well, you want to get out of the mill." I said, "Yeah, that's fact. That's a fact. But my plans were to finish up the A&T and head north." And he said, "Well," she said, "Well, sleep on." We discussed it for a while. And the next day I told him, I said, "I guess I said, okay, I'll try it," just like that. She said, "But see, you got to remember that during that particular time, there wasn't any blacks in fire service. I think Burlington Fire Department, I believe they had just hired Clay Bigelow out of Caswell, was the first person up there in Burlington Fire Department." And I said, "I don't know if I want to do this or not." Fire service, it was a closed profession for blacks. When I was in school, and most of you that's about my age and all know that you couldn't even go in the fire department, much less try to become a fireman. And when I started dibbling and dabbling looking into the bylaws and things of the local fire departments in here, you had to be 21 and white. And I was telling my supervisor, Dave Carver, I said, "You can't do this. This is illegal." So they had to have this meeting to change on it. Needless to say that during that particular time, when I decided to go on with that, yeah, the hostility was like you would believe. See, I was 30 years old. That's getting kind of old to get involved in fire service when you compete with guys at 19 and 20 years old. I was in pretty good shape. I was happy. Got a little weight on me now, but competing with people that young, also compete with, they was all white. And all was the fact that what they had on me was they had the opportunity to, when you're dealing with trucks that costing $200,000 and $300,000 and pumps that costing $100,000, water pumps and things like that, where do you go for that kind of training? Where do you go as a black person that you can't even get into the fire station at all? Where do you go for that type of help? See, God always put people along the way to help you out. So Jack, when I went back to Jack O'Kelly, was telling Jack about it, Jack said, "You got to make them respect you, JB," and said that I'll be here as long as I can to help you. And well, I went to one meeting. When I said one meeting, it was a conference really with Dave Carver. And it wasn't but one other black person in that room, a sea of white, everybody with white shirts on. A sea of white, you looked around with one other black person in the whole entire room. It was 200 people there. And we had the first break, and he and I finally got together and found out where this guy was from. He was from Sanford. And he and I was talking, and I said, he said, "Man, you know what, I'm glad to see you." That's the same here, but he was sitting on one side of the room and I was on the other side. But anyway, what had happened was he and I started to become very good friends and getting back with Clay Bigelow. Clay helped me as well. Like I said, he was at Burlington. So the things that I needed to know about trucks and things, pumps and things, Clay would give me those books, a lot of books and things, and he and I would meet and we would talk, and he would give me those books that I had to read. Now you got to realize that going into the physical section of it and reading it, you got to have practical application. At some point in time, you can read all day long, but you got to put your hands on that equipment to be able to make it work. And so I found a way to be able to do that. The other thing was that during that particular time, the law has changed since then, inline death benefits. So you had to belong to a volunteer fire department in order to be the inline death benefit in case something happened to you to protect your family. So Dave Caldwell was from Mecklenburg County. He was here, the first fire marshal. And incidentally, right now we hadn't had the sixth fire marshal, and I was the fourth one in Alamance County today. So, but he said that, so Bill Hetzel was from Elon Fire Department. And Bill Hetzel was in the office that particular day. So Dave said, I don't realize how biased people are, that JB owns property in two of the very fire districts that they paying fire tax on, but they don't want, because I lived inside the city limits, they didn't want me to be belong to the fire department in order for the inline death benefits. So Bill Hetzel said, you know what, said, come to Elon, said, I'll get him on. So you come to Elon. So I went to Elon that night for a meeting, and I got fill out the application. I got voted on as Elon Fire Department. Well, it was that reason because I could for the inline death benefits. Well, the name calling and all of whatever you can imagine that I've been exposed to. But before that, before all this stuff I'm telling you about, that 8 years, you got to remember that I was in the Army. I was in Vietnam. I was in a company that it was 90% white. It wasn't that many blacks in it. And when you go out, it was always, they put the boys in the danger boys, the colors, if they would. You was in more danger than anybody else because you had to walk point and all this kind of stuff. Well, what had happened to me at that standpoint is no different than what had happened to Moses and anybody else that God had called to do a service. See, for those people that he qualify. He will make sure that you will get the tools that you need if you believe in him. See, the parts that I'm leaving out was the fact that I knew I was going to be in service anyway, because he had revealed that to me years earlier when I was 5 years old, if you can put it that way, because what that significance is, and I don't want to start drifting. I just want to give you a little background information about this. It's because most of you remember your first day of school, and most of you remember that your mom most likely was the one that was standing beside you when you was there whooping and hollering and crying your first day of school. But picture this, kid that was sitting in school that particular time. That's me at my day. We didn't have desks. We was at a table back in the day. I was the only kid that was in there by myself. And my teacher, Miss Fleming, looked at me and said, I reckon, she said, well, where's that boy mom at? Daddy, my brother carried me down to my classroom. And he left me there, of course. The Lord is good and he's good all the time. And so what had happened was I had the opportunity to see what this like the very first day because of my brother. Because he's a couple of years older than me, but back in the day, his birthday is in October. The cutoff date was September. So I got a chance to see that. So I wasn't afraid about being in the room by myself. I wasn't afraid to go to Vietnam by myself. I had to be there. I was crying about it when I had got there, God-forsaken company. But there's nothing that has happened to me that you can't find that it happened to somebody else in the Bible. But again, when he started preparing you for this stuff, for this long journey, back in the States, back being in the fire service, and back in dealing with people, it was the same thing I had when I was in Vietnam. It was the same thing. And so that was fine with me. I was always fine with me that I wasn't afraid, because I always said, everything's good as long as you don't put your hands on me, buddy, we won't have a problem. But once you start putting your hands on me, then you're going to have a problem. And so when you go to these fire stations, they didn't want you in. You go to these fire meetings, they didn't want you there. But as the years stopped progressing, then I was like one of the boys that never saw color in me. was always coloring everybody else, but not with me, because evidently I had been there for so long. Well, Jack O'Kelly, uh, I needed to get the EMT thing. They wouldn't allow me to take the EMT test or the EMT situation in Alamance County. I wound up having to go to Guilford County to take that same EMT test that they wouldn't allow me to do in Alamance County. So I had to go to Guilford County. So when I finally got that particular thing done and passed the test and everything, oh, but let me tell you before about the test at all, that was one of the hardest tests that I've ever taken. And I have taken some super tests. The reason why that's so hard is because all the answers are right. One just might be more right than the others, but you had to read all those certain tests, and most of the time it was 100 questions. They give you a couple of hours to do it, and so you had to decipher that stuff pretty quick. And so I thought I passed it the first time. I just noticed back from the state said that I didn't. So I went back and had to take this exam again. Well, I went to Greensboro, took the test again, and passed it that time. I came on back to Alamance County with the certificate. And then John Brightmeyer, the guy who created this whole problem, wanted to give me a job with EMS, and I decided I didn't want to go to EMS. I wanted to stay where I was at. Jack O'Kelly had a heart attack at his house, and I was one of the last person. But I was the first person, myself and Dave Cobb was at his house when we done CPR on Jack there at his house. Of course, he didn't make it. And I said, oh my God, I don't know what I'm gonna do now. Well, God had brought me from point A to point B so far. And as long as I believe in believe in God, I wasn't afraid anymore, because that dime that I had in my pocket, which was that commission, was gone. But I also knew that I had to go to church every Sunday, because I had to get something, Reverend Ferguson, Reverend Stevens first, and Reverend Ferguson, to get me through the next week. If I could make it to church on Sunday, even though I was on call a lot, I had to go to church on Sunday. Church was such an important part of my life that I was raised in the church, and I knew that the things that was happening to me, that if the Lord wasn't there, I would have never made it. So I went on, and all of the obstacles and things that they threw out in front of me, the Lord had gave me the opportunity and showed me a way around all this stuff. And when we went down, they used to be 4 volumes on the building code, and they added volume 5, which was the 5 section of the building code. That was 200 questions, 4 hours to take this exam. I went through that darn thing like a dose of salt. I was the very first Black in Alamance County that got the certification. I was the 3rd person in Alamance County, but I was the first Black person. And I'm sure now that the new fire chief that's in Burleson, he probably got his certification. He's a brilliant young man. I'm so proud of him and what in the world to do. But back in the day, see, after a while, it's not about you. It's about the people coming behind you. And all they want to be able to say is that, well, we tried this guy and he couldn't do it. And so that's why Blacks, if you look at the Tuskegee thing, that's why they say that they want to get rid of folks, is because they was inferior. So we got through that. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we can still hear you.
Okay. Well, because my picture here has changed here, but so what happened was, I had lost my dad died, my mom died, and all of the situation that I call crutches that I could turn to a familiar face besides my wife. She was always there for me. She was always the sounding board for me. She was the person that when things got real bad, I could always turn. We would go home, we were talking, and she was the one that always would calm me down and help me saying, you need not to do this, you need to do that, and give you something else to think about. And I it had gotten so bad, I'll be honest with you, my pressure was up so high that my doctor told me at that particular time Barry was growing up. Barry had grown up, and Barry was getting ready to go off to school. And the 30 years we were talking of, I think that one of the most memorable things that I can think of is was I was in snow camp, and I'm about ready to close. I was at snow camp, and David Ray, who's the chief of Hall River, they had a situation of fire there in Green Level, and these two little boys uh, discovered the fire. They were the elementary school kids. And David Ray called me on the radio and said, JV said, where are you? I'm a car two was my title then. Car two, where are you? And I said, I'm my 1020s in snow camp. He said, I need you, code 3 up here at this fire scene. And I said, 10-4, I checked out code 3. That's lights and siren, and get here as quick as you can. And when I got there, the community almost had to fire the truck almost completely surrounded. And he said, this guy, who's Eric Albright, said, this guy's gonna have a race ride up here. I can't get out, get my boys out of here because he's already accusing these two little boys of setting this fire. I said, do what? And he said it again. So I said, where are the kids at now? And he said, they were standing beside it. They're both of them were standing beside his daddy. And the daddy had his arm around both his sons. I said to myself, oh God. So I walked over there to him and introduced myself to the dad. I shook his hand. I asked him, do you mind if I speak to your sons? He said, no. So I went on down the photo and got on down on one knee to the boys. I said, you guys know me? And they said, yeah. I said, where do you know me from? I said, you teach us fire prevention at our school. I said, what school you attend? Hall River Elementary? And they said, yeah, give me 5. It was I'll give high five. So the little boys had to take the arm away from under daddy's leg to give me a high five. So I said, well, which one of you is the oldest? And he pointed to his brother. I said, which one of you discovered the fire? And so the youngest boy said he was the one I said, so you got off the bus and you ran to the house and you the one got there? I said, you know what? He said, what? I said, I got 2 older brothers too. And they think they just boss you around all the time. You know how it is? He started laughing. He gave me a high five. And I said, told the dad, I said, come on with me. Let's go and let the boy tell me where the fire was. Well, what caused the fire was, it was a ceiling fan. So I turned to the dad and asked him after went in and discovered it. I walked a column off to the side. I asked him, I said, do you know, did you install that ceiling fan? And he said, yes. I said, well, was you having a problem with it going on and off and browning out the lights and things like that? And he said, yeah. He said he was going to call somebody to come over and take a look at it, but he didn't get around to get that done. I told him, I said, well, you know what I'm going to do? He said, what? I said, I'm going to say we got a malfunction there of that ceiling fan, and we're going to let this go at that. That's what my report's going to say. So is it okay with you? And he said, wow. And I said, now, that's fine. And so I turned to his sons and I asked them, I said, now you guys, I want you guys to come with me to my car. And they went over and I raised their right hand and I deputized them, made them all junior fire marshal, and gave them coloring books for all of their friends that were standing out there watching. And then they was going out there giving out coloring books. So I was telling the dad, you know what I'm doing here now? He said, well, I'm recruiting firemen. I want these guys to grow up to want to be firemen because that has always been a closed profession to me and my generation. But we need more young men. Now, I look around now and most of the departments now at one time are hiring blacks and putting them on. And I'm happy to see that because at some point in time, it's not about you. It's about the one that's coming behind you. And if you don't pave the way for somebody else to follow, and look at the ones that paved their way before me, all of the shoulders I'm stepping on, Kellys, the Bryants, and the list just go on, the people that I know along the way that helped me out. And so that's a brief synopsis of this 8 years that I was talking about that created the situation for me to become the person that I am. I want to thank my pastor and my favorite daughter-in-law for allowing me to have the opportunity to say a few words about myself. It's hard for me talking about myself because it's so much easier for me. For my, I'd rather listen to her. I'd rather listen to my son. I'd rather listen to my late wife than myself because obviously they had more uh, things to do than I. But I, I do. I want to tell her that, and I want to tell her publicly that I am so proud of her that I don't want to do. I done stole her from her mama. So Miss Iceline, she knows that we both love her to death. So I'm through, guys. If anybody got anything you want to ask me, you can. But other than that, I thank you for your time.
So, JB's name in the community when I first came to North Carolina and started working as a social worker carried a lot of weight in the community. And as a social worker, one of my primary functions at the time was to license, monitor facilities for the county. I was kind of like the middleman between the county and Raleigh. And I don't know how or what the length of time was between when I started doing social work and when JB left the county as a fire marshal. But I had to make sure facilities had proper fire inspections for each facility and then yearly after they were licensed. And to go back through those records, a lot of them were still kept on paper. I would actually see JB Brown's signature. JB is already a legend. He doesn't see himself in that light, but by the time I got here to Alamance County, JB Brown's name had already preceded him. And he had signed off on a lot of fire inspections for different facilities, which was what we monitor. And I'm sure that his signature is on other fire inspections for restaurants and everything that he was required to put his signature on. But his name speaks volumes in the community. It spoke volumes, in at the Department of Social Services where we carried out those duties. Those fire inspection inspectors, especially the fire marshal for the county, had to approve those facilities to make sure they were safe and just to be able to not only just see his name on those papers, but to be able to go back and say, I actually know this person. And then to see not only is he leaving a legacy, but to see another generation come behind him and carry on that position as fire chief. I believe Jay Mebane is a very young man that I also knew from licensure, and just to see that legacy from one generation to the next. So I am grateful to know you, JB Brown. It is a blessing to say that you have even been an influence in my life just the 10 years that I have been here in North Carolina. And just so grateful that the Lord allowed you to do what you did and put you in those positions, and the fact that you trusted God enough to leave a what you thought at the time was more of a stable job to step out on faith and do what your calling was. So I appreciate you.